Hello and welcome to the Get Creative with Layers tutorial. In this video, we're going to explore layers, one of the most powerful and fun features in Integration Designer. Layers not only improve efficiency, but also enhance the way you build user interfaces. Before layers, building and managing complex user interfaces was difficult and time-consuming. In this video, we'll review different ways you could utilize layers to take your interfaces to the next level. Think of a single photograph. In that photo, there's just the skyline. Now let's add some mountains in the background. Now let's add some trees. Next, let's add a figure in the foreground. Each of these elements in the photograph exists independently, yet together they form one image. You could say the photograph contains different layers. In Integration Designer, screen elements may be placed on different layers in exactly the same way. For example, you may want to separate different areas by functionality, or separate and share common areas to other pages on the controller, such as toolbar, instead of copying and pasting them to every single page. Or you may want to create pop-ups, such as alerts and client menus. Integration Designer features a layer window to create, configure, and manage layers. Let's look at the layer window next. I've opened an existing project, and as usual, the layer window appears on the upper right corner of Integration Designer. Even though this window can be moved, it's important to always keep it in view. You have to be careful when you're dragging and dropping elements to the interface or the page that you're on, that you're always making sure that the layer that you're selecting is correct. For example, some of these layers that comprise the home page may be shared, and those are denoted with a green S. A shared layer means that not only is it created on this page, but it was shared to other pages as well. You can see on this page, there's quite a few shared layers. Let's take a look at some of the features of the layer window. I can hide and unhide layers. So as I go through these layers, I can hide and unhide each layer and display what is actually on that layer. And that will hide it from you, the programmer, not the person viewing the interface. And the reason why we would hide a layer is because sometimes a layer could be in your way. For example, we've got a couple of pop-ups here on top. We've got a power menu, we've got a room menu, and we've got a source menu. And those layers would probably want to be hidden when you're not interfacing with them. So you could always hide layers. Another feature of the layer window is you could lock layers. As you can see, only one layer is locked, our controls layer. And our controls layer is called the baseline layer in our layer window. Every page needs at least one layer. And usually that one layer is our baseline layer. It's the main layer. It's the layer that is going to have the functionality for that page, at least the functionality that's needed that doesn't need to be shared. So you can see our controls layer is unlocked. And if I hide and unhide it, you can see that the controls layer hides part of the background and some of the buttons as well. So you can hide, unhide layers. You could also lock layers. If you lock a layer, you're not going to be able to select anything on it. For example, my volume bar is currently locked. I can't drag anything to it. I can't select anything on it. But if I unlock the volume bar layer, I can now select elements on that toolbar. Now, layers have an order that they appear in the layer window. So for example, the higher the layer in the list, in other words, the power menu is the highest layer in the list, well, that means that no other layer can overlap the power menu. So if I were to use the move up and move down commands in the layer window, which has its own little toolbar, like most areas in Integration Designer, if I move that layer down in priority, other layers can overlap that toolbar. And so it would be weird if that pop-up popped up behind buttons. So the pop-up for the power options is always on top. And again, the higher in the list, the less chance of a layer overlapping it. So you want to arrange your layers by order. As you can see, we have 3 pop-ups here: a room list, a source menu, and a power menu. And the power menu takes priority over the room menu. You could arrange orders any way you like. Now in the layer window, you could select the layer. So for example, I could select the controls layer, and I could go to my bitmaps. I could go and find a button, and I could drag and drop a button to that layer. And now once it's on that layer, if I hide that layer, that button should hide with it. Let's remove the button. Layers can also be shared. And we're going to show you how to do that. But layers that are shared have a green S. For example, our volume bar is a shared layer. And our volume bar is a shared layer because if we click on our controller, that volume bar appears on other pages in the software. And so the volume bar is needed as a shared layer so we can maintain it in one place. For example, if I select the lighting page and I unlock the volume bar and I go to my elegant sliders and I drag in a different slider, let's drag in a blue slider. Well, this will not only impact this page, because this is a shared layer, this will impact all the pages that that layer appears on. So you can maintain a layer in one place. You could change where the layer, what the items on the layer are placed, the color, the text color, and everything else. So if I change this to green, I'm not only changing this layer, I'm changing every single layer where that button appears. So that's an example of a shared layer. And we're going to show you how to share layers in the interface. Now, what if you accidentally drag a button to the wrong layer? As you can see, I have my controls as the only one that is unlocked, so it's not possible to drag anything over to another layer. But what if I accidentally unlock a layer and forget to lock it? And now I drag in, let's say, a button to that layer. So I'm just going to drag in a button to the volume bar layer, and I'll make this a little larger. Well, now this button, because it's on the volume bar layer, it exists on every single page because that volume bar is a shared layer, or at least the pages the volume bar is needed. Doesn't have to be every page. It has to be multiple pages. So what I could do if I drag and drop something to the wrong layer is I could select the item, right-click, and select Move to Layer and move it to the correct layer, which is the controls layer. And now that will bring it to the controls layer. I could lock the volume bar, and now just to double check if it's on my controls layer, I could hide and unhide it. And now I can select that button and move it in the right place. So always be careful about where you drag and drop buttons, but you could always move them either by cutting and pasting or by right-clicking and moving to layer. Now, not everything can be moved to a different layer. For example, if you come across a viewport and you right-click, there won't be a move to layer command there. You could only move buttons and feedback and text boxes to another layer. Okay, that's our segment on the layer window. When we come back next, we're going to create a layer in the layer window. In our first layer exercise, the client wants us to add their logo to the user interface. They only want it on one page, and they provided us with a marketing brand document. And the document shows their logo. It also provides some information, but it also provides the colors that we should be using. Now, we have a separate file for our logo on our desktop. So we have the logo, but the brand document is going to contain all the information we need about the color of the logo, and there's some useful information here. The name of the color, the hex value, the RGB value. There's also cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, but that's not going to be useful for us. What is useful is the rest of the information. Now, because we actually have the logo in our folder, let's add the logo using a layer. Now, whenever I'm adding a layer that's only on one page, it doesn't matter what view I'm in. I could be on the source view or I could be on the controller view. Doesn't make a difference. But the client wants it on his homepage. So we're going to find a place on the homepage where we could put this logo. We'll put it over here. It looks like an open area. And the first thing we're going to do in the layer window is create a new layer. So we're going to click on the little white icon. And if you hover over it, it says add a new blank layer. Let's click it. Now the layer wizard will pop up. Let's give this layer a logical name. We'll call it logo. Now, source and room are for linking layers to other sources. We'll cover that a little later on. We don't need to worry about that right now. And where it says visible, we could apply a visible state to a layer and make it only visible when a driver variable is true. For example, we can make it visible if a driver says the device is powered on or set to a certain input or any other variable we have. However, this logo is always going to be visible. Now down below, we have a couple of extra options here. We could lock the layer now, but that would be counterproductive since we haven't created anything on the layer. We'd have to unlock it anyway. And also we can make it shared. Now, what a shared layer means is that once you mark it shared, it's eligible to be shared throughout the interface. You could share it on to one or more pages or all pages or any pages you wish. But you can maintain and manage that layer in one place. So our layer currently is not shared. The client just wants it on the home page. So let's click OK with just the name of the logo filled in. Okay, now our logo goes on top of the list. Like we said, the list appearance matters. The higher the layer in the list, the less chance of a layer overlapping it. Our logo is on top, so no other layer can overlap it. Now that we have our logo layer, let's go and drag that logo graphic to our logo layer. I'm going to go to my options and set directories. These are my personal directories, and I can link my bitmap library to anywhere where I want to find bitmaps. Let's change this directory to where our logo is. Our logo is on our desktop, and it's called Client Graphics. Let's click OK. And then let's click OK to exit out. This will refresh our bitmap library, and if there's any logo or any graphics that are in that directory, the directory should appear in the dropdown. Here it is under Client Graphics. Now, here's our logo. It's currently white, which doesn't match the client colors, but that's okay. Now, making sure our logo is selected. A good tip to do, if you really want to be sure, is to lock every other layer. Now there's no chance of me dragging this to a layer that is anything but my logo layer. So make sure the layer is selected and drag the logo over. Now that the logo is dragged onto my interface on the correct layer, I can double check that by just hiding and unhiding my logo layer. That checks out. Now let's resize this. So I'm going to resize this so it fits in my toolbar. Let's put the logo right here in the toolbar. That's a decent size. We could even bring it in a little bit. We can make the width a little bit less, and that's fine. Now the branding document is going to contain the information we need to give this a proper color. Let's pull the brand document up. So there's a couple of ways we can go about this. Let's shrink this down a little bit. I'm going to drag this into my other monitor, at least halfway, so I can still see the logo layer. Now, with the layers selected, I can go now into the icon overlay. Let's select that. And now I can select more colors because the exact color isn't available in this list of swatches. So let's select more colors. Now in this larger color display, our color isn't in here either. So I have a couple of options. I could either enter in the hex value in here, and that'll work. I'll just cut and paste some of this text hex value here and pop that in and paste it, and that'll give us our correct logo. Another thing I can do is I could use the eyedrop tool. Let me just move this over a little bit more. I could use the eyedrop tool to sample that color in the other window, and that should give me the exact hex value as well. It's off by 1 digit, but that's okay. Or I could enter in under custom the RGB coordinates, and the RGB says 212. Let's make this a little smaller. 212 by 175 by 55. So I could do that as well, but I'll leave this as is and I'll click OK. Now there's one thing left to do. I don't want to have this treat like a button. I don't want it to show a reverse state and make the client think it's a button. It's just an icon that's going to be displayed on the interface. So let's right click, edit properties, and make this inactive. Let's click OK. And let's finally just lock our layer so we don't accidentally drag anything to it later on. And that's how you create a layer. Pretty simple. And now our logo is able to be used on this interface, or we could use it on other interfaces. Now, what if the client comes to us and now tells us that the logo needs to be on a different user interface? Well, that would be something called a shared layer. And we're going to do that next. So to do this, I find the best view for doing a shared layer is the controller view. So instead of selecting a source, I'm going to select the controller in the workspace. I usually like to start from the first page, which is fine because that's where our logo is already. Sometimes you want to create a shared layer right off the bat, and that's okay. Now, all I have to do to make this a shared layer is go into the layer properties of my logo. And the layer properties is this little icon here. It's a little picture of a square with a little wrench. That will bring up our layer wizard again. And this will allow us to change some of the arguments in our logo. We could change the name of the logo. We could also change some of the other parameters, or I could make this shared. Let's unlock it and let's make this shared. Now, a couple of important things about shared layers. Marking it shared does not automatically copy it everywhere. It makes it eligible to be used in more than one page. And we'll show you how to do that. Another thing about shared layers, once you make a layer shared, you cannot unshare it. So for example, I could unclick that now, but once I click OK and apply these settings, I'm no longer able to mark the layer unshared. So not too much of a big deal. It's actually a lot easier than you think. So with these parameters, let's select OK. Now in the layer window, you might notice that there's a little green S next to the layer. And that means our layer is a shared layer. And what that means is I can copy that layer quickly to all the pages or some pages and maintain it all in one place instead of having to change it and copy and paste it in more than one place. So let's see how this works. Now that the layer is shared, let's click our very next page in our page view. And as you can see, that's our weather page, or it could be any page, but that logo layer doesn't exist here, nor do we expect it. Our goal now is to insert that layer wherever we need it. So I'm going to click this time on the green button in the layer window, and that says Insert a Shared Layer. And that's how you insert a shared layer. Let's click it. And now up pops a list of all of these shared layers on our controller. And this means every every single layer that was marked shared when the controller and pages were created. Let's find our logo layer. Should be easy because it's alphabetical order. And there's a couple of arguments here that we can do. We can, of course, change the source and home page so the layer can look up tags from another source, but we'll do that a little bit later on. We could make it be visible under a certain condition, but this layer is always going to be visible. So let's skip that. Now we can insert it here only. So I could cherry pick the pages I add the logo to. So I could add it here, then pick another page and repeat and that and do it that way. Or I could select Insert to All Pages. Let's click that option. Now, as I would expect, that should copy the logo to every single page in our system. Let's click Close and let's select our pages to make sure that happened. And it looks like our logo is on every single page. Now, one of the great advantages of a shared layer is, what if the client now wanted this to be white? What if he figures that what if he changes his branding, or he just wants a neutral color? Well, I could go to any page where that layer appears as a shared layer. Let's unlock it, click on the layer, and now let's go back to the overlay options, and let's remove that gold color and move it back to transparent, which should show the white color. Or I could make any other color I want, maybe a little bit of an off-white color so it doesn't contrast too much, and that would be a good idea as well. Now, it would really be lousy if I had to now go and do this on every single page this logo appears, but as you could see, that change is reflected on every single page. Likewise, even if I select one of those pages and unlock that layer, and I move it over slightly, maybe move the location, or if I move the location entirely, what if I move the location on this side of the room title bar? Well, now every single page will reflect that change. And that's the beauty of shared layers. Just like I showed you with the volume bar, changing the shared volume bar layer will change it anywhere it appears on the entire interface. And that's the beauty of shared layers. Now, what if I didn't want that layer to appear on certain pages? I was okay with copying it everywhere, but now maybe I don't want it to appear on my climate page or my security page. I just want it to appear on my video and audio source pages. Well, in the layer window, there's a feature that allows you to delete any layer from just that page. So for example, I'll click on the climate page, and now I'll make sure my logo layer is selected, and I'll click Delete the selected layer. Please note that even if the layer is locked, it will delete that layer, but only from that page. The rest of the pages still have the logo intact. Now, what if you wanted to delete the layer permanently? Well, to do that, and you'll have to make sure that's what you want to do because it is a drastic move, but to do that, you're going to go to the Insert Shared Layer as if you're inserting a shared layer, but this time, when you select the logo layer, instead of inserting it to one page or all pages, you select Delete Layer. This will give you a pop-up that'll warn you and tell you that this layer is on 11 different pages, and if I want to delete it, click OK, and now that layer will be removed. Let's click Close, and let's move on to the next section, which is going to explain how to create a visible state layer. In any control system, pop-ups are a fundamental part of any user interface. They not only maximize real estate, but they provide an easy-to-use, still powerful interface without all that clutter. Today we're going to be going over visible state layers, which is just another word for pop-ups. Now, when you're performing pop-ups, there's two different types of ways you can do pop-ups. You can have pop-ups that pop up voluntarily. So if a client presses a button, it pops up a list of options. Or you can do an involuntary pop-up, which bases its pop-up on maybe a driver variable. For example, if a weather alert happens, or if voltage is too high, or if a system failure happens. So pop-ups can be involuntary and voluntary. Now, in this specific example, the client likes to travel a lot. And because of that, he travels to some fixed locations around the US. And so on our weather page, which normally shows the default weather we set up in the weather driver, he wants to have a pop-up where he could quickly change cities. And now he can prepare for those travel trips when he wants. So the first thing we're going to do is create a button on our main layer that's going to pop up our weather. So I'm going to go to our Coral elements, and I'm going to look for our button, main white button. And I'm going to put this in that toolbar, making sure I drag it to the controls layer. Okay, and I'll make it about that big. And I'm going to name this by putting in some text. Let's put in some prominent text, bigger size. Let's do a pop-up called cities. And this is going to pop up a list of cities that the client generally travels to. And so the first thing I'm going to do is give this a tag, go down to our tag window, and let's call this pop-up cities and hit enter. I'm going to pull my macro window up a little bit. Now in our macro window, since I'm only doing it on this page, we'll use source level controls. And I'm going to click on the red flag. And I'm going to name our first flag cities pop-up. And our flag that we're going to be using will either be set or cleared. So flags are just virtual variables in the processor that allow us to set the flag to true or false. And so we can set the flag to true or clear the flag to false. So let's make sure that the city's pop-up is named and click OK. And the goal is to set the flag to pop up the cities and to clear the flag to make the pop-up go away. Now in this case, we're going to go into the macro steps, go to our flag statement, but instead of setting or clearing this, we're going to toggle it. So this button will not only pop up our list of cities, but it will also hide it as well with a toggle. So now that we have our pop-up, let's create a layer. Let's go to add a new blank layer in our layer window. Let's call this city pop-up. And now where it says visible, we're going to be using that field because we want this layer to be visible when a certain condition is true. What condition? Well, normally we can use different drivers in our driver dropdown. But instead of using a driver, I'm going to select XP macro flags. And now I'm going to pick that first city's pop-up flag. So when that city's pop-up flag is true, our pop-up will display. And when it's cleared or not true, it will hide or go away. Let's click OK. And now, since this is not a shared layer, let's click OK. Now, we have the button on our main controls layer. Let's lock that so we don't accidentally drag something to it. It's a good habit to get into. And now let's click on our city's pop-up layer. Now this pop-up will have to be created. So I'm going to go to our bitmaps and I'm going to select our Coral, our elegance elements, and I'm going to look for that pop-up pop box. And I'm going to bring this out and make this large enough to fit our cities. Okay, that's probably good enough. Let's go and edit properties and make this inactive, at least for now, so that our buttons don't get embedded inside the pop-up when we drag them over. Let's click OK. Now I'm going to drag in some buttons. I'm going to go back to Coral for this. And again, look for button mean white. There it is. I'm going to drag that one over. I'm going to make these a little bit bigger. We're going to do a couple of cities. For now, we'll just do 3 cities. But of course, you could do as many as you like. So I'm going to align these to the top of a button. I'm going to equalize the spacing between them. I'm going to center them on the overlay. And now that that's done, I'm going to just copy and paste these to do 3 more cities that are centered as well. So I've got my pop-up. Now the first city we'll do is Boston. So let's label the text. We'll make it 15 as well, bold, and we'll call it Boston. The second city, we'll name that New York, and we'll do an abbreviation for that. We'll format the text last. Let's do Chicago. And the 3 other cities we'll do is Dallas. We'll do LA. And of course, make sure you give your client a way to get back to his default city, which is Tampa, Florida. Now let's format the text on all these buttons. Let's make them the same style as the first button. And then you're just going to give these tags. Let's tag the Boston one. We'll call that pop-up, Boston. That's not a standard tag. You can name these however you like. I'm just going to copy this to make it a little easier. Paste and just change the name to New York. Let's label this Chicago. And so on and so forth. I don't have to do all of these. You get the idea. Okay? Now that you have tags and names, let's bring in a command. So I'm going to go to my macro steps and bring in a command. I'm going to select from our device list the weather driver. Where is that guy? Here it is in the middle. And under function, I'm going to set location. Now I could either set the zip code or city, country, or country, city, or latitude, longitude, just like the weather driver. But I'm just going to put in zip codes. So Boston, 02108. Okay, let's copy this and paste it into New York. And with New York, we're going to do 10001. Okay, and then for Chicago, that will be 60601. Make sure you type those in right. And then make sure you always give your client a way to get back to his own city. So I'll just call this pop-up default, which is my default city. Paste the command in. And that, I believe, is Tampa would be 33701. Okay, so there you go. That's your pop-up. And so now, normally, the client's interface will look like this. He'll see his local weather. But when he's traveling, he'll select the city's pop-up. It'll pop up his list of cities, and it will press the button again to make it go away. Something you might want to do also on the regular button is to reverse state this when that XP flag is set. That way you know the pop-up is active. Oh, there we go. So that's how you use a visible state layer. Let's do one more. This time, the client wants to have a pop-up when his audio zone is muted. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to go and create a new layer. Add a new blank layer. Let's call in the layer wizard the layer mute pop-up. And now where it says visible, let's make this visible. Instead of using a macro flag, let's use a real variable from the driver. Let's go to our RTI DSP. And for our zone 1, let's do when the system is muted, or at least zone 1, we'll get this pop up. Click OK, and we'll make this a shared layer. Remember, once you make a layer shared, you cannot unshare it, but you can make an unshared layer shared. Click OK, and now that'll go to the top, which is pretty good so that no other layer can overlap it. Now we'll just go to our pencil, make sure we pick a shape, and we'll just draw this pop-up the way we want. We'll color it in with a color that will bring attention, like red. We'll center this on the middle, and we'll put some text here that says System Muted. Let's make this large, bold, and there we go. So we've got our layer here. Let's go into the layer properties and just make sure this looks right before we share it. We've got the mute pop-up, which is going to be visible when the mute variable for zone 1, which is our family room, is true. Click OK, and now move on to the next page. Click the green button, insert a shared layer, select our mute pop-up, and let's insert it to all the different pages. Click Close, and now as we move through these, we'll see our system muted pop up. And of course, we can make changes to this and change it in multiple areas. We could remove it from any page we like by simply selecting the page, selecting the layer, and clicking the X. Even on our home page, where we have another pop-up, weather page, where we have another pop-up, we could put the mute pop-up as a secondary layer so that the cities pop-up has priority. Or not, it's up to you. Now, what about this mute pop-up, about this cities pop-up? What if we add another IST10 controller? I'm going to go and add another one, and I'm going to add this other controller as well. I'll select button menus, and I'll call this IST10. We'll just call this client, and I'll just add all the pages. Now, do we get that same layer on our weather page on the second controller? Well, the layer is not here, but what we could do now is click on the Insert a Shared Layer, select our cities pop-up from the list. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not a shared layer. Let's pick the mute pop-up layer and insert it to all pages. But now we have a little bit of a conundrum. We've got the same pop-up on two different controllers using the same shared layer. So what happens now if I make a change to this mute pop-up on the first controller? Let's see what happens. What if I want to change this to some black font and change the color of this to orange? Well, that will fix this controller, but it will also impact our other controller. Now, we do have a way of handling that. If we click on the second controller and then we click on device function, we can disconnect the shared layers on this controller. It'll give us a warning because now our shared layer will be renamed to a different name on the second controller. That will be called number 1, as well as all the other layers as well. And now if I make a change to this layer on this controller, let's say I make this purple, it won't affect the other controller. That's something you could do with visible layers that are shared to multiple controllers. In our next segment, we're going to learn how to link layers to other sources and rooms, and that's coming up next. Another way you could take advantage of layers is to avoid time-consuming programming. For example, on this homepage, you'll see 3 different layers on the dashboard: a climate layer, a security layer, and a lighting layer. Now, all of these layers contain their own specific tag names. And if you look at the security one, these all have standard tag names. The problem with these layers is that they were created on the homepage. And in the layer name, you could see in parentheses where the layer is deriving its tag definitions. For example, the climate layer is located on the global homepage, and that's where it's looking up its tags and not finding any match. Same goes for the security and lighting pages as well. So we could link layers to other sources and derive their tags using other sources in other rooms. Let's show you how this works. In our system, I have a climate layer on my homepage. This is just meant to give you a quick way to access your thermostat. And you can see my climate layer has standard tag names on it. However, when I type in that standard tag name, it's not going to populate a command because I'm not on my climate control source page. And as you can see on my climate control page, I have similar tags and similar functionality, but because those standard tags are located on the climate control source, they will derive a relationship. So how do I link the layers on the homepage and look up those tags using a different source other than the homepage? I'm going to go into my climate layer properties by clicking on layer properties. And where it says source, I'm going to link this to the climate source. Now, use default room means use the default room where the layer was first created. And since my layer was created in the global area, I could either leave it on use default room or I can set it to global. It would be the same thing. And now if I click OK, this will now point to the global climate control, and now all these functions will have commands. So you're using another source to derive the tag relationships. Let's do the same thing with security. I'm going to select security, but this time in the layer, I'm not going to use the default source and the default room, the default source being homepage and the default room being the default global area. Instead, I'm going to aim this at the security in the default room and click OK. And now these will all populate with commands as long as there's a match on that source. And with lighting, I could do the same thing. I could link my lighting to my lighting source, my lighting control in my global area, and click OK. And now all of these scenes will have functions. Now, what if I didn't have lighting in my control interface? For example, what if I didn't have any lighting functions and this lighting layer was just set to use my default source in my default room and we didn't have any lighting to link it to? Well, I could repurpose this layer to do something different. I'm going to get rid of these buttons, at least most of them, and I'm going to relabel this my music. I'm going to call this my Sonos player. And now I could do anything I want here. I could go draw a dynamic image. So I'm going to go select the draw button, select a dynamic image, and I'm going to draw some cover art. I'll set this to use scaling, and I'll make it 240 by 240. Now for the buttons themselves, I can also draw a rectangle and draw some now playing artist function. Let's make it bold. Let's make it a little bigger. And I'll put in a text tag for the now playing title. Let's make this transparent. Change the font to white. And now I'll copy this to another function. Which will show the now playing artist. I could even put a couple of commands here. For example, I'll make the cover art a little smaller, let's make it 181. Let's make it 180 by 180. Now it's taking up less room. And let's use these buttons below to be some command buttons. I'll make this a little smaller. And we'll make this a play button. Let's make the font a little bigger. And that'll be our play command. Let's tag it play. And I could also do a skip forward. Oops. We'll make this a skip forward and tag it skip forward. And let's make another one for pause. And we'll tag that pause. Let's clean it up. Let's align these. Center them on the box itself. And relabel the layer to music. Now these tags don't have definitions. Oh, we forgot to name the cover art. Let's call that NP cover. Now nothing will populate because I'm using the default home source in the global area to find a relationship. Let me just fix this. Instead, I'm going to link the music layer to another source other than the default one that I created it on. Let's select our Sonos player and let's select the global area and click OK. And now all of these commands will have programming and feedback for them with the right visible state. Or I could change this to quickly point to a different source. I could change it to another source like the kaleidoscape in the global area. And now this will use the kaleidoscape to look up those tag definitions if it finds any, including cover art, title, and the commands. We couldn't find artist, but we could change this tag to NP director. And click OK. And that should populate our director. So you could use these for anything you like. Let me show you a better example of how you can use these. I have 4 lighting sources in my global area. A fixture, a spar ceiling lights, office sconces, and kitchen island. And I have a lighting source. So I'm going to click on the IST10 lighting source. Oops. On my IST10. And I'm going to edit my viewport and go to my lighting dimmers. Now currently, my dimmers don't have any programming on them. And all of these, I can manually program these to control my lighting, or I could link my sources to different layers. For example, circuit 1, let's link this to our global family room fixture in the global area. Click OK, and now this will program to those sources. I could link source 2 or circuit 2 to my office sconces in the global area, and now link that as well. So you could link your lighting as well and have it auto-populate as well. Let's do one last exercise. I'm going to bring in a source from the page sets, a blank source called audio control. And this is going to be a page where I could have my several different music zone dimmers or music zone volume levels. I'm going to add this without any pages. Then I'm going to go to my audio control page and use the page wizard from my IST10 to populate the Elegance Zone Overview page. Insert that, click Close, and now if I look inside the layer window, you can see that these are all set with particular commands that have been mapped to the zones. We've got one for the family room, we've got one for the bar, and so on and so forth. And these will automatically map to your zones. However, there's some more information I can derive. Let's link Zone 1 to the Family Room Zone 1 from our matrix in the Family Room and click OK. And now these will populate with the names of the Family Room current source, and other integers as well. Let's link Zone 2 to the bar in the bar. And now these will change to those definitions as well. So you could quickly populate your zone information as well. Let's do 2 more. Let's take care of Zone 3, which is the office, in the office, and Zone 4, which is the kitchen, in the kitchen. Click OK, and now everything's been programmed. Of course, you'll advance the viewport and either erase this if you're not using it, or add your zones 5 through 8. And that's how you link zones with layers, so you can avoid having to do programming. Thanks for watching our layer overview. This was how to get creative with layers. If you have any questions, give us a call. We'll take questions next.